Dahlias are one of my favorite flowers in the garden. They are sort of a collector's item. But as you collect dahlias, the tubers can get really expensive. So one thing I've learned is how to save your tubers over winter and be able to plant them again the next spring. When you dig a dahlia tuber up, you want to start really wide in your garden. Dahlia tubers can get really big, and so the wider you dig, the better. A harmed or split dahlia tuber isn't viable for the next spring. This is what they look like when you dig them up from the garden. When we dig them up, we always dig wide, keep part of the stem intact, and then once we clean them up, we'll be able to see how we want to split them up. When we start with the dahlias, they're going to come out in a big clump like this, carrying a bunch of dirt. You can use a soft vegetable brush to brush all the dirt off. Also a gentle hose. The idea is to not damage the tuber, but to get it clean of any debris and dirt. The dahlia tubers then need to dry off a little bit. I usually do this on like a grate or a rack out in my garden, but you really don't want them to dry off for very long. Just a couple of hours, maybe even 8 hours max. If you let your dahlia tubers sit out and dry for more than one day, they'll shrivel up and become too dry and they won't be viable to save. After you have a clean and dried off dahlia, start clipping off all of the excess that you're not going to save. For doing this, you need a good pair of shears, something sharp, something pointed, and something that you could do detailed work with. I really love the bare bones line, so I use the bare bones scissors a lot. These are super strong scissors and are able to cut through big gnarly roots and dahlia tubers. I also love their shibori knife. This is one of my favorites. Dahlia tubers, some of them are big, huge clumps. This is the Brandon Michael, and this is what its dahlia tuber looks like. But some of them are much smaller and much more petite. This is the tuber from Tiny Treasure. Here is just a tiny little bundle of tubers. A little bit harder to find each year as I dig them up in the garden. Never buy dahlia tubers on Facebook Marketplace. Buy them from a reputable source where you make sure you're getting a disease-free product. When you buy them from a catalog or a garden store, you usually get a tag that goes with each one. When you grow a lot of dahlias, it can be really important to label them. Otherwise, it can be hard to remember what you've got each year when you dig them up. So first, I usually start off by inspecting the tuber and making some of my choices. I look here and I still have the tuber attached to the neck. This is where the eyes or the crown of the tubers are, and then here's each individual tuber. I can begin by cutting off anything that's excess. Don't really need all these long, spindly roots. It makes it a little bit easier to clean things up. When I look at the tuber from this angle, I can see that this is the mother tuber. This is the original tuber that I planted this year in the ground, and then it grew all of these other tubers. This, of course, is rotten, and it's a pretty easy one to tell that it's rotten. It's soft, it's dark, it's mushy. I'm going to begin by cutting that away. There are some cases in which you might keep a mother tuber, but in this case, this I'm going to discard. Now, as I look over the tuber, my choices are about what's viable and what's not. It can be hard to see the eyes, which is where each one is going to sprout a plant. So what I do is I try to make sure each tuber has a connection to the crown, and if I can find a viable path for how to cut that away. So my first choice is going to be this tuber right here. It seems the easiest one to cut off the stem and the crown. So I'm going to find a good angle to come in and work with that. Now I have one split tuber with an eye and part of the crown. It looks to be intact and healthy and has no rotten parts. So that's a keeper. Each choice for each tuber is different. So it takes a lot of time to sort of look through the tuber and decide what choices you're going to make. It won't be the same every time. This tuber also has one eye, part of the crown, and the tuber looks good. I'm going to clean this up a little bit and set that aside. Sometimes tubers will be too hard to cut apart from each other, so I might choose to keep a couple of them together. And I think that's what I'm gonna do here. I'm gonna try and split that into two. This one I'm gonna discard. These two seem to me to be too dangerous to clip apart, as I'm going to damage part of the neck and the eye, so I'm gonna wrap them together. I'm gonna make sure to clean out any of the debris in here, because any dirt or debris is gonna be a case that might create rot in the tuber. But otherwise, this one looks pretty good. It's got an eye, it's got another eye right here, and then part of the neck intact. Both tubers look to be healthy, and that's a keeper. This one, I'm probably just gonna clean up, and I'm gonna also keep these two tubers together. There's an eye here, there's probably one under here that I can't see, and part of the neck. I'm gonna keep that one as well. Here's a smaller bunch that might make different choices with. This one is small enough to wrap all together, but if I do that, I also risk one tuber getting rotten and rotting its neighbor. So every time you divide tubers and split them and wrap them, you're hedging your bets against one tuber rotting the next tuber. If I can split it, I will. This one, I can see there's an eye here, there's an eye here, there's likely one right here. The eyes can be hard to see in the fall. They're much more prominent in the spring when they start to push out green shoots. So if I really want to hedge my bets, I will just divide the tubers into separate pieces. I will try to keep each part connected to the neck, and then in the spring when I unwrap them, if they're pushing an eye, I plant it. If I don't see any visible eyes, I can toss them at that point. But really, splitting tubers is about maximizing your stock. For most of us who grow dahlias and become obsessed with them, the more we have, the better. So this one I'm gonna keep. It's a nice, solid, firm tuber. It's got part of the neck and an eye right there. I think that I might keep these two pieces together. I can see an eye right there, part of the neck. I'm just gonna leave these together. Here's another look at a big tangled bunch of tubers. So a lot of it really is just about looking through, finding a good spot to start, and making choices as you go. This one is really tangled up as it has tubers growing through other tubers. So I'm gonna have to make some smart choices here. This is my mother tuber, the first one that I planted from this bunch. Again, it's not really viable. I don't wanna save it. That'll be my first move, is to cut it off. I have to make some choices about how I want to separate these two apart. And I think that I'm going to cut right here and try to break it into a more manageable piece. It can be scary to make some of these cuts, but the truth is we're trying to multiply our stock. So once you make some choices and become a little more brave, you trust your own decisions and you get the hang of it. So here, this plant has really prominent eyes. I can see one here, 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 and right there. That's gonna help me as I make the choices to cut it apart. I am probably going to start with this one. And as I go along and separate these tubers, I am trying to keep the same varieties together. It is important to me to name them as I wrap them, so I will try and keep tubers from one flower separate from tubers from another. This one kind of presents a difficult problem in that these two tubers are small, but this one has been cut by my shovel. It might be viable, it might not be. It's hard to say. Sometimes tubers will callus over and be fine for the next year, but I could save it all winter and it might not be viable when I look at it in the spring. It does have the biggest set of eye though for this little bunch, so it's risky. But I'm gonna choose to save these two little tubers in the neck, and I'm gonna cut this broken piece free. And and I'll discard that and I'll save this. Next, I'm going to show you how to wrap your tubers to keep them over winter. This is the Dahlia Society's preferred method of wrapping tubers. I will add a name tag if I can. That's really helpful. That way, as I unwrap them in the spring, I can tell what bundle I'm working with. I will start with the name tag and the first tuber, and I will wrap it up like a little burrito. After it's wrapped pretty well and tight, I will add in one of the tubers that I cut from the same bunch, and I will continue rolling that. And this method keeps varieties together. It also separates each tuber by several layers of plastic. That way, if one tuber rots, it doesn't rot its neighbor. And when I unroll them in the spring, I'm able to see what I want to keep and plant and what I need to toss out. After I have all my tubers wrapped like this, nice and tight and sealed in a little plastic wrap or saran wrap, I will just lay them into a big open box. I don't put a lid on the cardboard box, and I keep it in a basement closet that is cool and dark. Ideally needs to be between 40 and 50 degrees. So garages usually are not a good place. If a garage in Minnesota is left to its own devices, it's much too cold, and if you have a heated garage, it's probably also too warm. So really a basement closet that's dark and dry and cool. I will check on the tubers several times over the winter just to make sure that things are going well and I don't need to adjust anything. And then I usually keep my spreadsheet with all of my tubers named, their ID codes, and some of my growing notes. I will keep that in the box. So if I have any questions as I'm going through, I'm able to look it over and see what's working and what's not. In the beginning, I started with dinner plate dahlias like everybody else, but then became obsessed with some of the collarettes, the decoratives, and even the teeny tiny pom-poms. I keep this spreadsheet each year. I'm not super obsessive about it, but I do try to update it with successes and failures. We have a short season in Minnesota, so I plant my dahlias out early in the spring. I harvest them each year around mid-October. The next spring, I do it all again. Last year, I dug up 95 tubers, and I had about a 90% success rate with this method of wrapping them. That's pretty good. That's about the best I can ask for. This one is a collector's item. It's called Cafe au Lait. I got this at Tonkadale. This one is Brandon Michael, a collector's item also. I got this one at Tonkadale. This one is Tiny Treasure. She's adorable. I got her at Tonkadale. This one's called Envy. This one is Patricia Sunset. This one is Holly Hill Black Beauty. She's new to my collection and was probably my favorite this year. Such a stunner. This one is called Pooh. I really can't tell you how happy they make me. I bring them in, I share them. My whole obsession got started from my friend Deb, who gave me 5 dahlias. I planted them, I fell in love. I dug them up, I mishandled them. I tried to save them, it didn't work. I felt terrible that I ruined all these tubers that were a gift from another fellow flower lover. The next year I committed myself that I was gonna do better. I bought more dahlia tubers, I planted more flowers, I was determined to dig them up and save them. Again, I killed them. They all shriveled up, they all rotted, none of it worked. The next year I spent more money on more dahlia tubers. And that year I did a lot more research. I found the Dahlia Society's method, and even though it sounded counterintuitive to wrap them in plastic, that's really what's worked for me year after year. And now here we are. Thanks for coming. I always love to talk dahlias. If you're ever in the store and you want to show me pictures of your dahlias, I'm here to fawn over your pictures. As you're digging up your dahlia tubers and wrapping and storing them for winter, if you have questions, you can email me at hello@tonkadale.com. I answer that email and I will happily answer your questions about your dahlia tubers. See you at Tonkadale.